A Baghdad family hold a party for their teenaged son. But this is not a party to say happy birthday or well done in your exams. This party is to celebrate the release of a 17-year-old from the world's most notorious prison, Abu Ghraib. He's still too scared to be identified, so we'll just call him Mohammed. He says he spent 5.5 months in Abu Ghraib before being released without charge. Mohammed claims he was abused during interrogations there many times up until mid-July, months after the prisoner abuse scandal became public.
There's torture everywhere. They handcuff you and put a sack on your head during interrogations. Then they beat you with the butt of their guns or a stick.
The US military says there have been no new allegations of abuse since the start of January, yet everything Mohammed says dates from a month later.
The Americans were laughing again and beating me with iron sticks while the music was playing. They beat me and kicked me around while I was blindfolded. I didn't know who they were. I can't understand why they were laughing and singing while beating us and having fun while torturing us. I still don't understand. Why did they do that?
Over the past few weeks, Channel 4 News has gathered testimony from children who say they were incarcerated and abused at Abu Ghraib. Sergeant Samuel Provence worked for US military intelligence in the prison. He came across a 16-year-old prisoner who'd been used in his father's interrogation against army rules. He escorted the boy away from the interrogation centre afterwards.
He had the skinniest arms I've ever seen on a person, and he was literally shaking head to toe, and his wrists were so small that we couldn't even put handcuffs on them. They threw water on him, and then put him in the back of a Humvee and then presented him to his father. They were trying all these other interrogation techniques and that he would not talk. But after seeing his son in this state, that's what broke him. It broke his heart, and crying and saying, he would tell them, whatever they wanted to know after that.
Samuel Provence also gave evidence to the Army's own investigation into prisoner abuse. After speaking publicly on the issue, he's had his security clearance revoked. In the back streets of Baghdad, we found still more recent testimony that children were being incarcerated in Abu Ghraib. The Al-Ubaidi family's 16-year-old boy, Luway, is still there. They say he was detained in a security sweep following an explosion in the city 6 months ago.
When the Americans arrested him, he was trying to get out of the area where the explosion happened. They beat him and shot him in the leg. He was wounded but had to stay lying on the river's edge for 2 hours while flies gathered around him, but nobody helped him.
They shouldn't put children in Abu Ghraib. That's a big mistake. Is this the humanitarian ideals Americans are talking about? They claim they're here for humanity, democracy and freedom, but they put our kid in Abu Ghraib. That's a place for adults.
The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child says no child should be arbitrarily detained, subjected to torture or to inhuman or degrading treatment. But 2 countries are not signed up to the convention. Somalia is one, the other is the United States. 17-year-old Mohammed was arrested in a night raid after a tip-off saying he was a resistance fighter. Human Rights Watch says informers are paid for tip-offs whether or not they later turn out to be true. Mohammed says he was initially taken to a police station.
One of them brought a cable and asked me, "Do you know what this is?" He put the cable on my hand and told me, "I'll show you what this is." He then gave me an electric shock on my hands and my legs. He said, "What do you say now?" I said, "I still don't know anything." And then he started to beat me with the butt of his machine gun and an iron stick. My hand was folded from behind and they put a sack on my head. And then they threw me in the mud.
In response to all these allegations, the US military told us leadership involvement and other changes in the camp have ensured that the conditions you describe are extremely unlikely to have occurred. There is obviously nothing we can do to rectify or investigate unsubstantiated claims that have not been reported to the multinational force. We are doing what's right by all the detainees we are responsible for.
If indeed your statements are true, that you have put in now checks and balances to ensure that this never happens again, then what's the problem about accepting the idea of public scrutiny, of allowing human rights organizations that publish the results of their research to actually go in and verify that it could be in fact in the interest of the coalition forces to have this kind of monitoring. Otherwise, the statements that they make about improvements remain worthless.
At least for now, Loe's mother Hannah knows where he is, although to visit him requires a day of queuing for an appointment, then another day of travelling to and from the prison. And because 16-year-old Loe was the family's main breadwinner, Hannah usually has to sell some food ration cards to pay the fare.
They let us visit my son once a week. Before the scandal, you couldn't visit them once a month, or even once every 3 months, but it's better these days. Now you can see them once a week.
Our camera is not allowed to accompany her to the prison. Hannah does not have long with her son, but she is allowed to have her photograph taken with him, and he tells her grim new details about his treatment.
The prisoners are still afraid of Americans and are in a disastrous situation. The Americans torture them and beat them. My son told me that they released dogs on them to scare them. My son was frustrated and stressed out. When the Americans took a photo of us, he was looking at them as if he wanted to eat them.
UNICEF says it has been given limited information about children in custody in Iraq, and it's concerned about their categorisation as internees. It says unjust detentions are a leading cause for the mounting anger and potential radicalisation of the young people of Iraq. Months after the Abu Ghraib prisoner abuses were exposed and supposedly ended, many young people here believe those who invaded their country in the name of freedom are still a long way from occupying the moral high ground.